Good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today, a special episode and a special guest. It is a great honor and privilege to welcome Dr. Françoise Meunier, who is a Belgian oncologist and former Director General of the European Organization for Research and Treatment of Cancer. And she is, of course, the face of the movement, which is called The Right to be Forgotten, Ending Discrimination Against Cancer Survivors. It is a great pleasure to welcome you today on my channel, Oncofit Kalitka, and thank you once again for accepting the invitation.
Thank you very much for inviting me to speak about a topic very close to my heart for 10 years now.
When I was reading about that movement, about that topic of right to be forgotten, I actually realized that I came across that issue myself. I remember when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and during my treatment, I, together with my husband, was looking for different mortgage options. We were visiting different banks. And this is where I came across this denial, because some of the procedures that were present and are still present, especially in Poland, made it almost impossible for cancer survivors to get a mortgage. And this was something that I couldn't understand. Later on, I came across your foundation, your movement. And when I heard about it and I had the pleasure of meeting you, I was sure and I knew it right away that I would like to speak about it. And this introduction is very necessary because I have a feeling that many cancer survivors, many cancer patients, especially in Poland, they might not be aware of this right to be forgotten concept. And I would really like to discuss it in more details today. So, Dr. Meunier, would you mind telling us what is the right to be forgotten about and how did it all start?
Yes. Well, first of all, I would like to state that the right to be forgotten has nothing to do in this meaning of ending discrimination with the right to be forgotten within the GDPR. You know, when you want your privacy and your name to be erased from some database and so on. So it's nothing to do. This is related to ending financial discrimination against cancer survivors. You know, more and more, there are plenty of patients who face cancer, but who survive. And this is rather new in the last 2 decades, I would say. And that's how I came interested in that, because when we medical oncologists tell to a patient, you are cured, live your life, they want to start to get back to the so-called real life, but they are penalized, discriminated if they want to buy an apartment like you just mentioned. And why? Because when you go to a bank for a loan, usually the bank asks for a life insurance
Exactly.
to cover the mortgage. And it's there that the trouble comes, because you cannot lie to an insurer. And the insurance, before giving you the insurance, will send you and ask you to fill a medical questionnaire to evaluate your health status. And there comes trouble, because even if you had cancer 6-7 years ago and that you are considered as cured, you have to mention it on the questionnaire. And that is the difficulty. And it's how the whole issue started. And in fact, I was impressed by the number increasing of patients who survive. And also in France, in parallel, in 2016, they create the law, le droit à l'oubli, right to be forgotten. And as I was working at the European level, I was thinking that if it is possible in France, it should be acceptable and applicable to all EU citizens with cancer. And it's how I decided at the end of my professional career to dedicate the last part as a retired person to implementing the right to be forgotten at the EU level for all EU citizens.
When we talk about right to be forgotten, is it mostly about financial discrimination, or are we dealing with any other aspects of that situation here?
Well, me personally, I am mostly involved in the financial discrimination, but it's considering many different topics, such as getting back to work, having the right to adopt a kid if you can no longer have a kid and you want to adopt one child. So it's encompass various different issues, but I must say that specific problems require specific solutions. And that's why I decided to dedicate all my energy to one problem and try to find one solution to the financial discrimination against cancer survivors. But I agree that all the other aspects are as important.
What are the main objectives of the right to be forgotten? What are you fighting for?
So what I would like is an harmonized, legal, so binding framework at the European level, putting all cancer survivors from the whole EU at the equal foot. So what we mean is that 5 years after the end of treatment, when an oncologist tells you, you are cured, we are not going to make in all the CT scan, PET scan, exam consult, clinic, and so on, every 3 or 6 months. Perhaps a follow-up, long-term follow-up once a year, yes, but not regularly. At that time, 5 years after that point, ending of treatment, without relapse, that means that the patient should have the right to be forgotten and have access to financial services, adoption, getting back to work as a normal people.
And how does that work so far? I've read on your organization's website that there are 9 member states so far in the European Union that accepted some sort of the right to be forgotten, I would say, postulates, those major objectives. Can you tell us a little bit more how that goes?
Yes. Well, in fact, as I mentioned before, France started in 2016. And then we got Belgium in 2019, Netherlands in 2020, and so on. And so today we have, as you say, 9 member states who have a law. So it's not a type of flexible situation. It's a binding law. And in addition to that, there are 5 EU member states who have the so-called Code of Conduct, which is not a law, which is not binding, but it's a type of mutual agreement, convention, making possible for the cancer survivor to get access to financial service. But it's at the goodwill of insurer, because if insurer don't apply, it doesn't work. So that's why I stress so much the importance of having a legal binding framework, because there is no discussion. You are in the criteria, 5 years without relapse, or you are not. And there is no interpretation possible.
How does it work from a national standpoint? When you have, like you mentioned, France and Belgium were the first ones who adopted the right to be forgotten legal regulation. This is something that is imposed on, for instance, the banking sector to be able to forget about this cancer history in those patients, and meaning that whenever we have a cancer survivor, or he or she is not a patient anymore, to be exact, but the bank has an obligation to accept such individual if he or she tries to get, for instance, a mortgage loan. How does it work?
Yes,
in practice?
Yes. In fact, there are 2 possibilities. Either the insurer in the law must no longer ask a medical questionnaire. So if there is no medical questionnaire, that's it. Or you can have a medical questionnaire, but the condition 5 years after the end of treatment have not to be taken into account. They are not taken into account. So either you have a medical questionnaire, you are declaring that you had cancer, but 6 years ago, so it's finished. Or there is another possibility in France, for example, for some insurer, they even abandon the medical questionnaire, for example, for a woman with breast cancer. So there are various types. We want an harmonized legal framework, but it doesn't say that it has to be strictly the same in every country. There are some national specificity that we can accept and live with. It's totally understandable. But the general principle of 5 years after the end of treatment without relapse, that is the crucial point.
And in fact, it's not 5 years in every country. I think France and Belgium are the most yes, developed in that aspect. Other countries has a longer time span, right?
Yes, Spain also has 5 years, but it is more recent. In fact, Belgium and France start with 10 years, and it's the best proof that it is working, because throughout this year, we observe that it is feasible and that there is no threat or jeopardizing the financial sustainability of insurance company. And so in France and Belgium, they did what I call desescalation, decreasing the time from 10 years to 5 years. That is the best proof that it is effective.
Je bent sama, want je dat zeggen voor Lovana.
So time span is one of the initiatives that can be included in the Right to be Forgotten initiative. But there could also be a goal of the amount, the maximum amount that can be borrowed, for instance, or there can be other non-legislative frameworks as well, right? As part of the Right to be Forgotten initiative.
Some countries did put a maximum amount, like Netherlands, for example, while in France also, they have a maximum amount. In Belgium and numerous other countries, there is no maximum coverage included in the law. So that is part of what I call the national specificity. The cost of living and the cost of housing and buying an apartment is totally different in Paris, in Luxembourg, in Romania. So we have to admit that and accept that there are some national specificity.
So would you agree that this is an initiative that is some sort of a bottom-up initiative, that it starts from a national movement and then it started to be a cross-border greater initiative?
Well, there are two aspects in that question. What I would call bottom-up is that it's a request from cancer survivor, from patient. And the best way to convince politicians is to have patient testimony. Who am I to try to convince a minister to change the law? But if you hear several patient testimony, that is really important for the local change of laws. Now, the other aspect of bottom-up is EU level versus member states. And initially, it's true that what I try to get is an European legal framework, but that is extremely difficult to have an European law, a directive who has to be transposed in national legislation.
How do you even do it? How do you even start that? Where do you start the process of
or a regulation? That is very difficult. But we were very lucky to get the support of Stella Kyriakides and to put the Right to be Forgotten in the European Beating Cancer Plan. And that was an important hope to try to implement directly at the European level, because it takes part of the Beating Plan and it is also mentioned in the Cancer Mission Board, in the mission of the EU. So I had hoped that we could have an European solution, which would be easy. But the history has shown that it was impossible to get a consensus because the different member states had to agree on what to include, and we could not get a consensus on a law, on a binding regulation, but just a code of conduct. And honestly, I don't like a code of conduct because it's not binding, and I feel that it is a trap. And that if you have a code of conduct, everybody will be happy and say, goodbye, we have it. But in fact, it may not change the things for the cancer survivor. And that's why then I started to go member state by member states, because I believe that the more countries have it, first of all, the better it is for the citizen. And also, the easier it will be to convince many more countries. So yes, bottom up from the patient to the law, but also from member states to EU.
And looking from that perspective, what do you think is the most challenging? Trying to find the group of patients who would be able to lobby for it, or trying to find the right people in those European organizations? Because I'm asking this question specifically because before we met, I also checked what's happening in Poland with regard to the right to be forgotten, right? And there's actually nothing, at least as what I'm aware of. And I'm thinking what I can do as an individual, together with perhaps other groups of patients, in order to start the conversation. Because I think in Poland, that would be the first step.
Yes, there are things ongoing in Poland. It's a team effort. And it starts from having good patient testimony, patients who have been surviving and who have faced the problem, who can explain the problem. And that you get through Cancer League, Cancer Charity, Cancer Organization, Cancer Association, and so on. And then with that, when you have a solid package of patient testimony, you go to the politician, because it's easier to convince the politician when you have case to show and practical example. So that's the way. But as far as I know, things are moving in Poland, and I was told that perhaps at the end of the year or at the beginning of next year, something would happen. But it's a team effort.
As always with patients.
Yes.
There is much work that needs to still be done to incorporate the Right to be Forgotten initiative and make it more harmonized throughout the European countries. What are the next steps for you as a leader in that matter?
My priorities now, what I am working the most is Poland and Germany, which are big countries, which target a lot of potential cancer survivor. And so I dedicate a lot of my efforts currently to Poland and Germany, but also to each presidency, because I still don't stop working at the EU level and, for example, discussing with the Cyprus presidency, with the Irish presidency. It's parallel work, member states and EU, but Poland and Germany are my priority for the moment. But you can be helpful as well, if you find, if you identify a good way to convince politicians and finding patients, it's really important and it's helpful.
Definitely. And I think this is a good opportunity as we speak. If you happen to have this experience of discrimination, please contact us. I will be happy to gather the stories, your experiences in a written form and forward them to Dr. Meunier, because I believe that those bottom-up initiatives, they really matter, and they can change how we live and what the quality of life of cancer survivors is. Thank you, Dr. Meunier, for your time and for your willingness to talk about that issue.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.